Say that again.
Captain Emma Carter's voice was flat, controlled. The kind of calm that only comes from a person who already knows the answer isn't going to change. The radio crackled. Captain Carter,
This is command.
the voice said.
You are ordered to withdraw all personnel from Meridol Valley by 1400 hours.
That is a direct order,
Withdraw to where?
Emma asked.
We have 200 civilians inside the checkpoint perimeter. Right now.
Leave them.
Three
Command
words.
replied.
Emma stared.
3 words. Emma stared at the radio like it had spoken a foreign language.
Say again, Command.
She said.
You heard me, Captain.
The voice repeated. Leave them.
This is not a request.
Around her, the checkpoint kept moving, soldiers stacking sandbags, a medic wrapping a child's scraped knee, an old man arguing with a translator about a goat he refused to leave behind. None of them knew yet. Emma keyed the radio again. Command,
We've got scouts reporting militia movement 6 kilometers north.
If we pull out now,
This valley is undefended.
say again.
Undefended.
Negative, Captain. Confirms.
Negative,
no.
Captain. Command answered. Intelligence confirms no hostile movement in your sector. Compliance is required. Command out. The line went dead. Emma lowered the radio slowly. Lieutenant Marcus Reyes had been standing close enough to hear every word. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her, the way a man looks at someone about to jump off a cliff, waiting to see if she's really going to do it. Ma'am, Reyes finally said.
Ma'am, did they just tell us?
To abandon 200 civilians?
Emma answered. That's insane, Reyes said. That's an order, Emma said. Reyes lowered his voice. Emma, he said, what are you going to do? She didn't answer right away, because right at that moment, a small hand tugged at her sleeve. She looked down. A boy, no older than 8, dirt on his face, a torn blue jacket 2 sizes too big, eyes far too old for a child that age. Captain, the boy said in broken English, the words clearly practiced. You are leaving. Emma crouched down to his level.
Who told you that?
Everyone is saying trucks are leaving.
The boy answered. She glanced past him. He was right. Word had already spread through the crowd. Mothers were pulling children closer. An elderly woman was crying quietly near the fence. The boy looked straight into Emma's eyes. If you leave, he asked, who will protect my mom? Silence. Real silence. One, the kind that swallows every other sound around it. Emma had commanded soldiers through firefights. She had made calls that got people killed and calls that saved them. She had never once frozen. She froze now. What's your name? She asked quietly. The boy hesitated, then answered. Arrow. Akaro, Emma said. I need you to go find your mother. Stay close to her. Can you do that for me? He nodded, unsure, and disappeared back into the crowd. Emma stood up. Reyes was still watching her. Emma, he said again. What are you going to do? She looked north, toward the mountains where her scouts had spotted movement 3 hours ago. Movement that Command insisted didn't exist.
I'm going to trust my scouts over a desk in a building 600 miles from here, she said.
That's not what I asked, Reyes said.
We're not leaving, Marcus, Emma said.
2 soldiers had spent the last 6 hours crawling along the ridgeline above the valley with binoculars and a thermal scope that was older than both of them combined. One Corporal Danny Ibarra and Specialist Ren Doyle. What they'd found didn't match anything on Command's screens. Trucks, at least a dozen. Camouflage netting. Weapon crates being unloaded in the dark. They radioed it in immediately. Command, be advised, Ibarra said. We've got multiple vehicles, weapons crates, staged positioning north of the valley. This isn't nothing. Unconfirmed, Command replied. Disregard. Ibarra keyed the radio again, frustration cracking through.
Copy that! Unconfirmed, he said. For the record, I'm looking right at it. Disregard, Corporal. Command out. That was 2 hours before the withdrawal order came through. Quick pause before we continue.
If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's episode, it goes even deeper than this. Sergeant Dale Whitfield was the first to say out loud what half the company was already thinking. "Captain, with respect," Whitfield said, "we cannot disobey a direct withdrawal order. That's not a gray area. That's a court-martial." "I know what it is, Sergeant," Emma said. "Then you know what happens to you," Whitfield said. "To all of us." Emma turned to face her company. 41 soldiers. Some had served with her for years. Some had joined 6 months ago. All of them were now staring at her, waiting. "I'm not ordering anyone to disobey," she said. "I'm making my decision. Anyone who wants to comply with command's order can fall out right now and board the transport trucks. I will not hold that against a single one of you." No one moved. Huh. Whitfield exhaled hard through his nose. "You're killing your career, Captain," he said. "Maybe," Emma said. "But if I leave, 200 people die tonight. I can live with losing my career. I can't live with that." Whitfield studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up his rifle. "Well then," he muttered. "Guess I'm staying too." By nightfall, Emma's fears had a name: the Iron Veil Front, a militia faction that had been quietly regrouping in the mountains for weeks, invisible to satellites, invisible to command's confident intelligence reports, but very visible to 2 exhausted scouts lying flat in the mud with a broken thermal scope. The first shots came just after 2200 hours. "I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request." At 2247, Private Kian Ashford took a round to the shoulder while dragging an elderly woman to cover. He kept firing with one arm until Reyes physically pulled him back to the medic.
Let go of me! I can still shoot!
Ashford said, teeth gritted.
You can shoot with a bandage on just as well,
Reyes said. "Doyle, get over here!" At 2300, the militia tried the north side, the exact route Ibarra had warned command about.
They knew, Ibarra said breathlessly, reloading behind a low wall. They knew we were vulnerable there. Command had that intel and did nothing.
"Focus, Danny," Emma said. "We deal with that later." At 2330, a new problem surfaced, one no amount of ammunition could solve. The generator powering the schoolhouse lights and the medic's field equipment sputtered, huffed, and died. Total darkness swallowed the compound except for muzzle flashes and the dim red glow of chem lights. "Generators out!" a voice shouted. "We've got wounded in there who need light." Doyle was already moving, flashlight in one hand, medkit in the other, sprinting across open ground toward the schoolhouse, despite the gunfire still cracking overhead. "Doyle, get down!" Reyes shouted. "Can't!" Doyle called back. "Ashford's bleeding out in there." She made it. Barely. A round punched through her sleeve without touching skin, close enough that she felt the heat of it pass her arm. She didn't stop moving. Inside, by flashlight and pure stubbornness, she got a pressure bandage secured on Ashford's shoulder wound, with her hands shaking so badly it took her 3 tries to tie it off.
"You're insane," Ashford muttered through gritted teeth.
"You're welcome," Doyle shot back. Outside, Emma made a call over the radio that would matter more than she realized at the time. "All units, converge fire on the eastern tree line for 60 seconds on my mark," she said. "I want them to think we've got more guns than we do. Mark. Now." The concentrated volley worked exactly as she'd hoped. The militia's advance stalled, fighters pulling back to reassess an enemy that seemed, for a brief and crucial window, far larger than it actually was. By midnight, the checkpoint had held. Barely. 3 soldiers wounded. No civilian deaths. But everyone knew this was only the beginning. Emma pulled Reyes aside near the schoolhouse. "How's ammunition?" she asked. "Rough count. Maybe 6 hours if this pace continues," Reyes said. "Less if they push harder." "Water and food for the civilians?" she asked. 2 days, he said. "Maybe 3 if we ration." "Radio contact with any other unit in range?" she asked. Reyes hesitated. "Emma," he said. "Nobody's answering. Command flagged us as non-compliant. I think they cut us off on purpose. Make an example." Emma clenched her jaw. "Then we survive without them," she said.
By the second day, the strain was showing. Sergeant Whitfield, who had stood beside Emma the night before without hesitation, found her near the water station, voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "Captain, I need to say something, and I need you to actually hear it," Whitfield said. "Go ahead," Emma said.
"We're bleeding resources to protect people who aren't ours," he said. "My job, our job, was never to die for a village that isn't on any mission briefing. I followed you last night because it was the right call in the moment. But if this keeps going, we're not going to have a company left to save anyone." "So what are you suggesting, Sergeant?" Emma asked. "We put 200 people outside the wire and drive away." "I'm suggesting we consider it," he said. "No," she said. "Captain," he started. "I said no, Dale," she said. Whitfield held her gaze for a long second, then looked away first. "For the record," he said quietly, "I hope you're right about all this." "So do I," Emma said. That afternoon, the militia probed the checkpoint's defenses again. Not a full assault, just enough pressure to test for cracks. A burst of gunfire from the tree line sent everyone scrambling for cover. It lasted less than 90 seconds, but 90 seconds was long enough to remind the company exactly how thin their margin for error had become. Afterward, Emma found Private Ashford sitting against a supply crate, his wounded shoulder freshly rebandaged, staring at nothing. "You should be resting," she said. "Can't sleep," Ashford admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear that truck going up." Emma sat down beside him, an unusual thing for a captain to do, but there was nothing usual left about this deployment. "Ibarra saved lives before he died," she said quietly. "That supply run he was on, 1 Alf, the ammunition we used to hold the line last night, came off that truck before it hit the device. He didn't die for nothing, Kian." "Doesn't make it hurt less," Ashford said. "No," Emma agreed. "It doesn't. It's not supposed to." Ashford looked over at her. "Can I ask you something, Captain?" he said. "Off the record?" "Go ahead," she said. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Staying?" Emma considered the question honestly, the way she considered most things. "I regret that it cost us Ibarra," she said. "I regret that it might cost more before this is over, but I don't regret the decision itself. There's a difference between regretting a choice and regretting what a choice costs. I made peace with that difference a long time ago." Ashford nodded slowly, like the answer had settled something in him. "Then I guess I'm staying too," he said. "For whatever that's worth from a guy with one working arm." "It's worth a lot, Private," Emma said. Not everyone shared Whitfield's doubt. Specialist Doyle, K-2, 19 years old, barely 6 months into her first deployment. Kay had spent the morning teaching a group of village children how to build tiny sandbag walls, just like the real soldiers, turning fear into something resembling a game. Aro had appointed himself her personal shadow, following 2 steps behind her everywhere she went. "You're not scared?" he asked her at one point. "Terrified," Doyle admitted, smiling despite it. "But scared people can still be brave, you know? Those aren't opposites." Aro thought about that for a moment. "My mom says the same thing," he said. "Smart woman," Doyle said. That evening, disaster struck from an unexpected direction. A supply truck attempting to sneak in extra ammunition through a back trail hit a hidden roadside device. The explosion lit up the eastern hillside. 2 soldiers were in that truck. Corporal Danny Ibarra didn't make it. Private Ashford 6, already wounded from the night before, 6 survived, but barely, pulled from the wreckage by Whitfield and dragged nearly a quarter-mile back to the checkpoint under sporadic fire. Emma knelt beside Ibarra's body for exactly 4 seconds. Not longer. She couldn't afford longer. She closed his eyes, stood up, and turned back to her soldiers, her face unreadable.
Reyes, she said. Status. Her voice didn't shake. Not once. But something in her eyes had changed.
"Emma," Reyes said carefully, "you don't have to be a statue right now." "Yes," she said. "I do. If I stop, everyone else stops too." On the 3rd day, Emma finally got what she'd been begging for, a working satellite link, patched together by Doyle using salvaged equipment from the wrecked supply truck. It wasn't much 6, A narrow bandwidth, barely enough for encrypted text 6, but it was enough to pull partial intelligence files Command had refused to share.
What she found changed everything. The maps Command had been using 6, the ones confirming no hostile movement, in Meridal Valley 6 were outdated by nearly 3 weeks. A routine satellite pass had been rescheduled due to weather delays further south, and no one had flagged the gap. Analysts had simply assumed the old data still held.
It didn't. Emma stared at the screen, piecing it together. "Reyes," she said, "get over here." He leaned over her shoulder, reading. "Wait," he said slowly. "The convoy Command wanted us protecting in the first place, 6, the one carrying the medical shipment. 6, that route runs directly through 6. Through the exact position the militia has been fortifying," Emma finished. "If we had followed the withdrawal order and pulled out yesterday," Reyes said, "this checkpoint would have been empty when that convoy passed through this morning. They would have driven straight into an ambush with 0 warning and 0 support," Emma said. Reyes exhaled slowly. "So Command isn't evil," he said. "They're just wrong. Wrong in a way that gets people killed either way," Emma said. "If I obey the order, 200 civilians die tonight. If I ignore the order and stay here without warning anyone, 6, that convoy still drives into an ambush tomorrow, because nobody's fixed the actual intelligence failure. So what do we do?" Reyes asked. Emma was already reaching for the radio. "We do both," she said. "We hold this checkpoint, and we get this data to Command, whether they want to hear it or not." The radio call that followed would later be read aloud, word for word, in a military courtroom months later.
Command, this is Captain Carter, Emma said. I have satellite confirmation that your intelligence on Meridal sector is outdated by 19 days. Enemy forces have fortified positions directly along Route Kestrel 6, the exact route your medical convoy is scheduled to use tomorrow morning. A long pause. Then a different voice, 6 sharper, more senior.
"Captain Carter, this is Colonel Hastings," the voice said. "You are currently in violation of a direct order. I am not in a position to entertain field theories from an officer who has already demonstrated a pattern of insubordination."
Sir, with respect, this isn't a theory, Emma said. I'm sending the coordinates and timestamps now. If that convoy leaves on schedule, you will lose every soldier and every driver on it.
"Noted, Captain," Hastings said. "Your withdrawal order stands. Comply immediately, or face formal charges upon your return." The line cut. Emma looked at the radio for a long moment. "They're not going to stop the convoy," Reyes said. "No," Emma agreed. "They're not. Not based on my word alone." "So now what?" he asked. Emma looked out at the checkpoint, at Whitfield checking ammunition crates, at Doyle bandaging a little girl's scraped elbow, at a Rose sitting cross-legged near the schoolhouse steps, watching her like she was the only steady thing left in his world. "Now," she said, "we hold this position long enough to prove it ourselves, and we pray somebody back at Command is smart enough to double-check before that convoy rolls out." The militia's final assault came at 0340 hours, under cover of darkness, exactly as Emma's scouts had predicted 3 days earlier. It hit from 3 directions at once. "Ha! Contact! Contact all sides!" Whitfield's voice tore through the checkpoint. Emma was up and moving before the second shout finished. "Reyes, get every civilian into the schoolhouse basement, now!" she shouted. "Doyle, cover the west flank with Ashford. Whitfield, hold the east. That's our weak point." Gunfire erupted from every direction. Tracer rounds cut through the darkness. A mortar round landed 30 meters from the fence line, throwing dirt and debris into the air. Somewhere, a child was screaming. Emma grabbed Aro's mother by the arm, half guiding, half shielding her toward the schoolhouse. "Stay low! Stay together! Go, go, go!" she shouted. Aro was frozen near the doorway, staring at the chaos with wide, terrified eyes.
Arrow! Emma shouted over the noise.
"Look at me. Inside. Now." He snapped out of it and bolted for the door. The fighting raged for nearly 40 minutes without pause. Whitfield's east flank held, but barely. 2 more soldiers wounded, ammunition dwindling toward critical. On the west side, Doyle and Ashford fought back-to-back against a push that nearly breached the fence line before Reyes arrived with reinforcements just in time. At 0417, the bridge connecting the checkpoint to the main supply road collapsed under mortar fire, cutting off any possibility of vehicle evacuation. "We're cut off," Reyes reported, breathless. Blood on his sleeve that wasn't his own. No way out for the trucks. If this position falls, everyone here is trapped.
Emma made a decision in half a second. The kind of decision commanders aren't supposed to have time to make.
"Strip the trucks," she ordered. "Every spare part, every piece of armor plating, every scrap of equipment we don't need to survive the next hour. Turn it into cover for the schoolhouse. We're not evacuating tonight. We're holding." "Emma, that equipment is Army property," Reyes said. "Stripping it like that, that's on top of everything else you're already facing."
I know exactly what it's on top of, Marcus, she said. Do it anyway.
At 0455, with ammunition running critically low along the eastern line, Whitfield made a call over the radio that Emma would remember for the rest of her life. "Captain, I've got maybe 2 magazines left per man out here," he said. "If they push one more time, we're not holding this position with rifles alone." Emma looked around at what was left. A stripped supply truck, coils of razor wire, sandbags stacked 3 high, and 40-some soldiers running on fumes and adrenaline. "Reyes," she said, "the flare launcher from the wrecked truck. Does it still work?" "Should," he said. "Why?" "Because militia fighters operating off old maps and no air support are going to assume flares mean incoming artillery support," she said. "We don't have artillery, but they don't know that." Reyes stared at her for half a second, then broke into something between a laugh and disbelief. "You want to bluff an entire militia unit with a flare gun," he said. "I want to buy us 20 minutes, she said. "Do it." The flares went up 3 minutes later, streaking orange and white across the pre-dawn sky, followed immediately by Doyle, broadcasting fabricated coordinate callouts over an open radio channel, loud enough for anyone monitoring the frequency to hear.
It worked exactly as long as Emma hoped it would. Samp won long enough.
The militia's advance stalled, fighters pulling back to reassess, giving Whitfield's line just enough breathing room to redistribute what little ammunition remained. "That," Whitfield radioed a few minutes later, "was either the smartest or the stupidest thing I've seen a commanding officer do. Ask me again if it works," Emma replied. By 0530, as the first gray light crept over the mountains, the militia's assault finally broke. Not because they were defeated, propuonen, but because Emma's company, battered and nearly out of ammunition, had simply refused to give an inch, and the attackers had taken losses they hadn't expected from a supposedly abandoned checkpoint. Silence fell over Meridal Valley. Real silence. The kind that arrives after violence, heavy and strange. Emma walked the perimeter alone, counting the cost. 5 wounded, 1 dead, a supply truck destroyed, a bridge collapsed, a stripped convoy of vehicles now serving as makeshift barricades around a schoolhouse full of exhausted, terrified, but alive civilians. 200 people, still breathing. Arrow found her sitting against the schoolhouse wall as the sun rose, staring at nothing in particular. He sat down beside her without a word, the way children do when they don't have the vocabulary yet for what they want to say, but understand exactly what silence means. After a while, he spoke. "You didn't leave," he said.
No, Emma said quietly. I didn't.
"Everyone said you would have to," he said. "I know," she said. He leaned his head against her shoulder. "Thank you for keeping your promise," he said. Emma hadn't remembered making one, but somewhere in the last 3 days, without ever saying the words out loud, she had. In the hours between the militia's retreat and the arrival of the military police, the checkpoint transformed from a battlefield into something quieter, stranger, quieter, a kind of exhausted, fragile peace that nobody quite trusted yet. Whitfield walked the perimeter with Emma, rifle slung, counting damage out loud more out of habit than necessity. "Fence lines shredded on the east side," he said. "Schoolhouse roof took 2 hits but held. We lost the second supply truck completely, and the first one's not going anywhere without serious work." He paused. For what it's worth, Captain 1, I was wrong to push back the way I did. You weren't wrong to raise the concern, Dale, she said. That's your job. Questioning me isn't disloyalty. It's what keeps commanders honest. Still, he said, I want it on record. I'll follow you into worse than this, if it comes to it. Let's hope it doesn't come to worse than this, Emma said. They walked in silence for a moment, past soldiers treating minor wounds, past civilians beginning to emerge cautiously from the schoolhouse basement, blinking against daylight they hadn't been sure they'd see again. You really think Command's going to court-martial you? Whitfield said, after all this.
I think Command doesn't like being wrong,
Emma said.
and I made them wrong in front of a lot of people. That tends to have consequences, regardless of outcome.
Doesn't seem fair, he said.
It isn't,
she said. But fairness was never part of the deal, Dale. I knew that going in. She hadn't always believed that.
It hadn't survived the sight of 200 people trusting her with their lives, while a voice on a radio, safe in a hangar 300 kilometers away, told her to drive off and leave them behind.
She didn't judge the lieutenant she used to be too harshly for believing it. She just wasn't her anymore. Nearby, the military police arrived 4 hours later, escorted in by the very convoy Emma's warning had ultimately saved. A convoy that Colonel Hastings, after finally double-checking satellite imagery against Emma's coordinates at the 11th hour, had rerouted away from Route Kestrel less than 90 minutes before it would have driven directly into the ambush position. The convoy commander, a grim-faced major named Elena Petrov, stepped out of the lead vehicle and looked around at the shattered checkpoint, at the stripped trucks turned into barricades, at wounded soldiers being treated in the open, at 200 civilians emerging slowly from the schoolhouse basement, blinking in the daylight.
Captain Carter, she asked.
that's me!
Emma said. Petrov looked around again, taking in the full scope of it.
Your warning is the only reason my convoy is still in one piece, she said quietly. We hit Route Kestrel's rally point on the alternate path.
Found evidence of a staged ambush large enough to wipe out our entire column. I'm glad you're safe, Major, Emma said. Petrov studied her for a long moment. I'm sorry, she said, but I still have to do this. She nodded to the two MPs behind her. Emma didn't resist as the cuffs went on. She simply looked over her shoulder, one last time, at her soldiers Port 1 at Whitfield, arms crossed, jaw tight, saying nothing, because there was nothing left to say. At Reyes, who looked like he wanted to argue and knew it wouldn't help. At Doyle, tears in her eyes. At Arrow, standing beside his mother, utterly confused about why the woman who had saved his life was being led away in chains. Captain Emma Carter, the lead MP said formally. You are under arrest for willful disobedience of a direct order, unauthorized destruction of military property, and conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline.
Understood, Emma said simply. She didn't argue. She didn't explain herself. She simply walked to the transport vehicle and got in. Behind her, Arrow broke free from his mother's grip and ran after the vehicle, shouting something in his own language that the translator, catching up breathless beside him, finally repeated in English.
He says, Agwan, wait, the translator called. She has to know we won't forget. Emma turned back just once, through the small rear window, and saw the boy standing in the dust, one hand raised. Then the vehicle pulled away. For the next several weeks, Emma said almost nothing. Not to the defense counsel assigned to her case. Not to the reporters who somehow got wind of the captain who defied orders to save a village. Not even to Reyes, who visited twice and left both times more frustrated than when he arrived. You have to fight this, he told her during the second visit, sitting across a plain table in a plain room that smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner. You have the satellite data. You have my testimony, Whitfield's testimony, Doyle's testimony. You have Major Petrov's convoy as living proof you were right.
I know what I have, Marcus, she said.
So use it, he said.
I made a choice knowing what it would cost,
She said.
I'm not going to spend the next 3 months performing outrage about paying that cost.
That's not outrage, he said. That's justice. Maybe, she said. Or maybe it's easier to let the evidence speak for itself, than to stand up and argue for my own innocence like I did something shameful. I didn't do anything shameful, Marcus. I'm not going to act like I need to convince anyone I did the right thing. Either the truth is enough, or it isn't. Reyes stared at her, equal parts furious and, quietly, deeply proud. "You're the most stubborn officer I've ever served under," he said. "I've been told," she said. Doyle visited a week later, uninvited, carrying nothing but a folded piece of paper she set carefully on the table between them. "What's this?" Emma asked. "Arrow drew it," Doyle said. "Before they flew him and his mother out for resettlement processing, he made me promise to give it to you, and then made me promise a second time in case I forgot the first promise, which, in his defense, is a very Arrow thing to do." Emma unfolded it slowly. A child's crayon drawing, a soldier standing in front of a small building, sun overhead, one word scrawled beneath in careful, uneven handwriting. "Promise." She stared at it for a long moment, saying nothing. "He also wanted me to tell you something," Doyle continued, softer now. He said, and I'm translating as best I can remember it, "Tell the captain that soldiers who keep promises don't need a court to say they were right, but he hopes the court says it anyway, so everyone else knows too." Emma pressed her lips together, blinking hard. "That's a lot of wisdom for an 8-year-old, she said. "Kids notice more than we think," Doyle said, "especially the ones who've had to." Emma folded the drawing carefully and slid it into her jacket, in the inside pocket, where regulation technically didn't allow personal items, and where, from that day forward, it never once left. "Thank you, Ren," she said. "Don't thank me," Doyle said. "Thank the flare gun idea. Half the company still can't believe that actually worked." Despite everything, Emma almost laughed. "Neither can I," she admitted. Word of what happened at Meridal Valley had, despite Emma's silence, begun to travel. Soldiers talk. Major Petrov's after-action report, one which included a full account of the intelligence failure, and Emma's warning, she admitted, which included a full account of the intelligence failure and Emma's warning, soldiers, had circulated well beyond its intended distribution list.
Petrov, for her part, requested permission to testify at the court-martial as a witness. An unusual step for an officer with no direct chain of command relationship to the accused. When a colleague asked her why she was willing to put her own name on record for a captain she'd known for less than a day, her answer was simple.
"Because I owe her convoy's worth of soldiers their lives," Petrov said, "and because somebody in that courtroom needs to say out loud what actually happened, instead of letting it get filed away as an administrative infraction."
"You're not just defending her," her colleague said. "You're prosecuting the system that put her in that position." "Somebody should,"
Petrov said. "Might as well be me." Colonel Hastings, for his part, remained convinced the ruling would be straightforward.
"An order is an order," he told a fellow officer over dinner one evening. "If we let field commanders decide which orders they feel like following based on gut instinct, we don't have an army. We have 200,000 individual opinions with rifles."
"Even when the gut instinct turns out to be correct?" the officer asked.
Hastings set down his fork.
"Especially then," he said, "because next time, the gut instinct might be wrong, and we'll have already taught every captain in this command that insubordination is acceptable as long as it works out." It was, in its own way, not an unreasonable argument, and that was precisely what made Emma's case so difficult, for the prosecution, for the defense, and for the officers who would eventually have to decide it. The courtroom was smaller than Emma expected. Plain walls, a long table for the panel of officers who would decide her fate, a single flag standing stiff in the corner. Reyes, Whitfield, and Doyle sat in the gallery behind her, along with several soldiers from her company who had traveled at their own expense to be there. The prosecuting officer rose first.
Captain Carter received a lawful order to withdraw, he said. She acknowledged receipt of that order. She then knowingly and deliberately disobeyed it, endangering her command, destroying military property, and creating an international incident that this army is still managing the fallout from.
Whatever the outcome, whatever her intentions, the fact remains, she disobeyed. He wasn't wrong, and Emma didn't pretend otherwise when it was her turn to speak.
I disobeyed the order,
She said plainly, standing at the defense table. I want to be clear about that from the beginning. I'm not here to argue I followed procedure. I didn't. A murmur moved through the gallery. So why? General Marisol Voss, the presiding officer, asked. Should this panel not simply apply the regulations as written? Emma took a breath.
Because the order I was given was based on intelligence that was 19 days out of date, she said. Because following it would have resulted in the deaths of 200 civilians that same night. And because, although Command didn't know this yet, it would have also sent a medical convoy directly into a militia ambush the following morning, with zero warning and zero support.
That's a convenient narrative, Captain. The prosecutor cut in. Do you have evidence to support it, or only your account of events? I have the evidence, sir, Emma said. This was the moment the entire trial had been building toward.
Emma's defense counsel rose and requested the panel review a sealed intelligence file. The same satellite data Emma had pulled during the siege, cross-referenced against Command's original briefing materials, alongside official timestamps proving the 19-day gap in reconnaissance. The file was declassified for the proceedings.
For nearly 10 minutes, the courtroom sat in near total silence as the panel reviewed the documents. General Voss finally looked up. Colonel Hastings, she said, were you aware, at the time you issued the withdrawal order, that your intelligence on Meridal sector was 19 days outdated? Hastings, seated in the gallery as a witness, stood slowly. No, ma'am, he said. I was not. When were you made aware? Voss asked. When Captain Carter transmitted this data to my command post during the siege, Hastings said. And what was your response to that transmission? She asked. Hastings hesitated, the first hesitation he'd shown in the entire proceeding. I ordered her to comply with the original withdrawal order regardless, he said. Why? Voss asked. Because at the time, I believed it to be an unverified field theory from an officer who had already demonstrated a pattern of insubordination, he said. Was it in fact unverified? She asked. Hastings looked down at the table. No, ma'am, he said. It was accurate. Colonel, did Captain Carter's warning ultimately factor into the decision to reroute the medical convoy away from Route Kestrel? Voss asked. Yes, ma'am, Hastings said. It did. And what did that convoy find upon investigating the original route? She asked. Hastings' jaw tightened. A staged ambush position, he said. Sufficient to destroy the entire column. The courtroom was utterly silent now. General Voss turned to Major Petrov, who had been called as a witness.
Major, in your professional assessment, 6 had Captain Carter complied with the original withdrawal order and evacuated Meridal Valley as instructed. What would have happened to the 200 civilians under her protection? She asked.
Petrov didn't hesitate.
They would have been killed, General, she said. The checkpoint was the only defensible position in the valley. Without it, there was no cover, no barrier, and no time to relocate 200 people, many of them elderly or very young, before the militia arrived. And your convoy, Voss asked, would have driven directly into a fortified ambush, with no warning whatsoever. Petrov said, we would have lost the entire column, every soldier, every driver, and the full medical shipment intended for 3 field hospitals. Voss made a note, then looked directly at Emma.
Captain Carter, she said, you understood, at the time you made your decision, that you were violating a direct order and risking severe career and legal consequences.
Yes, ma'am, Emma said. I did.
And you made that decision anyway, Voss said.
Yes, ma'am, Emma said. Why? Voss asked.
Emma was quiet for a moment. When she answered, her voice was steady, but softer than it had been through the rest of the trial. Because a little boy asked me who would protect his mother if I left, she said, and I didn't have an answer that let me leave. I know that's not a legal justification, General. It's just the truth.
The prosecuting officer rose for a final round of questioning, clearly unwilling to let the panel's sympathies settle without one last challenge.
Captain Carter, isn't it true that regardless of the outcome, you had no way of knowing at the moment you made your decision that you were correct? He asked. You gambled 200 lives and 41 soldiers' careers on a hunch. It wasn't a hunch, sir, Emma said.
It was a professional assessment based on direct scout reporting from Corporal Ibarra and Specialist Doyle, corroborated by satellite data I obtained independently after the fact. Data you didn't have access to at the moment you disobeyed the order, he said. That's correct, she said. So at the moment of decision, you were, in fact, gambling, he pressed. Emma held his gaze steadily. Every command decision in a live engagement is a gamble, sir, she said. The difference is what you're gambling with, and what you're gambling against. I weighed 200 confirmed civilian lives against a career. I'd make that same trade again without hesitation, and I'd make it faster next time. The prosecutor opened his mouth to press further, then seemed to think better of it, and sat back down. Does the defense have anything further? Voss asked. No further questions, General, the defense counsel said. Then this panel will recess to deliberate, Voss said. The panel deliberated for 2 days.
Emma spent both of them in near total silence, sitting alone, running the entire ordeal through her mind again and again. One, not with regret, but with the strange, hollow patience of someone who has already made peace with whatever comes next.
When the panel reconvened, General Voss read the findings herself. This panel finds, she said, that Captain Emma Carter did knowingly disobey a lawful order issued by superior command. Emma kept her face still. However, Voss continued, this panel further finds that the order in question was issued based on materially outdated and unverified intelligence, that compliance with said order would have resulted in the near-certain deaths of approximately 200 civilian non-combatants, and that Captain Carter's independent verification and subsequent transmission of corrected intelligence directly prevented catastrophic loss of life among both civilian and Allied military personnel. This panel further finds that Captain Carter's conduct throughout the Engagement 6, including her decisions regarding equipment allocation, personnel deployment, and civilian protection 6, met or exceeded the standard expected of an officer under extreme and rapidly evolving battlefield conditions.
It is the finding of this panel that formal charges against Captain Emma Carter be dismissed in full, Voss said. The gallery erupted 6 not loudly. This wasn't the kind of courtroom where people cheered, but there was a visible ripple of relief, of soldiers exhaling breath they hadn't realized they were holding, of Reyes gripping the back of the bench in front of him with both hands and closing his eyes. Voss wasn't finished. Additionally, she said, this panel recommends Captain Carter's conduct be formally reviewed for commendation and recommends a full review of the intelligence protocols that led to this failure, to ensure no officer is placed in this position again. She looked directly at Emma. Captain Carter, she said, this panel recognizes that the decision you made was made without the benefit of knowing, at the time, that you were correct. You made it anyway. That is not insubordination, Captain. That is leadership. This court is adjourned. One of the panel officers, an older colonel who had said almost nothing throughout the entire proceeding, lingered behind after the others had risen to leave. He approached the defense table, where Emma was still gathering her thoughts more than her papers. 31 years of service, he said quietly, and this is maybe the 4th time I've seen a panel rule this way. Most captains in your position spend the whole trial explaining why the rules didn't really apply to them. You never did that once. I didn't think the rules were wrong, sir, Emma said. I thought the information was wrong. Those aren't the same thing. He studied her for a moment, something like respect settling into his expression. No, he agreed. They're not. Good luck, Captain. Thank you, sir, she said. Outside the courtroom, the hallway was full of people Emma recognized, and several she didn't. Reyes reached her first, pulling her into a hug that lasted several seconds longer than regulation probably allowed for. Whitfield shook her hand, said nothing, and somehow that said everything. Doyle was openly crying, and didn't seem to care who saw. But it was the last person through the door that stopped Emma completely. Arrow. He'd traveled with his mother and a translator, arranged quietly by Major Petrov weeks earlier. Just in case, she'd said. The ending was one worth being here for.
The boy crossed the hallway at a run and threw his arms around Emma's waist before she could say a single word. She knelt down, the way she had that very first day at the checkpoint, and held him. "You kept your promise," Aro said quietly, echoing the words he'd spoken at dawn after the siege. Emma's composure, Kawan steady through gunfire, steady through arrest, steady through a court-martial where her entire career had hung in the balance. Kawan finally broke, just slightly, just enough for a single tear to escape before she wiped it away. "I told you I would," she managed. Whitfield stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the reunion with an expression he clearly wasn't used to wearing. "You know," he said to Reyes, low enough that only the lieutenant could hear, "I told her staying was going to end her career."
You were wrong, Reyes said.
"I've never been happier to be wrong about anything in my life," Whitfield said. Reyes clapped him on the shoulder. "Get used to that feeling, Sergeant," he said. "Something tells me it's not the last time she's going to prove one of us wrong." Behind them, Colonel Hastings stood near the doorway, watching. He didn't approach. He didn't apologize out loud. But he removed his cap for a moment, in the small, old gesture of respect that needed no further words attached to it, and then quietly walked away. 6 months later, Captain Emma Carter stood before a formation of new recruits at a training facility half a world away from Meridal Valley, delivering a lecture that wasn't part of any official curriculum, but that her superiors had, somewhat reluctantly, agreed to let her give anyway. "You will be given orders," she told them, "that make sense on paper and fall apart the moment reality gets involved. Somewhere, someone with a screen and a map and the best intentions in the world will be working with information that's already gone stale. And one day, you may be the only person close enough to the ground to know it." She paused, looking over the rows of young faces. "When that day comes, you'll have to decide what kind of soldier you are," she said. "Not the kind who follows orders. Every soldier does that. The kind who follows orders and still finds a way to protect what those orders were supposed to protect in the first place, even when the two things stop pointing in the same direction." In the inside pocket of her jacket, exactly where it had lived since the day Doyle first handed it to her, was a small folded drawing, a child's crayon sketch, of a soldier standing in front of a schoolhouse, sun overhead, a single word scrawled beneath it in careful, uneven handwriting. Promise. She never needed to unfold it to remember what it said. She kept it anyway. Some promises are worth carrying, even long after they've already been kept. As the recruits filed out of the room, one of them, Six, a young woman barely out of basic training, Six, lingered behind, hesitant. "Captain Carter?" she asked. "Yes," Emma said. "How do you know?" the recruit asked. "In the moment. How do you know when it's the right call to break the rule, and when it's just you being wrong?" Emma considered the question the way she considered most things. Carefully, honestly, without reaching for an easier answer than the truth deserved. "You don't always know," she said. "Not for certain. Not in the moment. All you can do is ask yourself who pays the price if you're wrong, and who pays the price if you're right, and then be willing to live with whichever answer you choose. I couldn't live with 200 people paying for my obedience, so I chose to be the one who paid instead, if it came to that." "And if it had gone the other way," the recruit asked, "if you'd been wrong?" "Then I'd have been wrong for the right reasons," Emma said. "That's still better than being right for the wrong ones." The recruit nodded slowly, turned, and left. Emma stood alone in the empty room for a moment, the drawing still resting quietly against her chest, and allowed herself, just briefly, to remember a small hand tugging at her sleeve, and a question she never wanted to be asked again, because she never wanted to have to leave. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting on your screen. If this one hit you, tap to watch the next, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Oh, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from.